Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Thunderstock Show, a collection of valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. This season is all about the EOS journey. I'm happy to have Adam Kaplan, all the way from Michigan. Adam, let me ask you first. I know that we're all living on Henry Ford's time today, but what did you want to do when you grew up before being cognizant that EOS implementer could have been an answer?
I've had a lot of things over my life that I've wanted to be. First, I wanted to be a lawyer. I've wanted to be an entrepreneur for a long time. There's a bunch of different things that I've wanted to be when I've grown up, but I feel like I found a good spot here as an EOS implementer.
So I understand you went to Williams to study English. I love that. As someone who was also an English major in school, not quite Williams, although some of my classmates did attend there, very prestigious liberal arts school for those that don't know. What inspired you to choose that as your first step into higher ed?
Oh, well, I love that. Well, first of all, 30th anniversary next month in Williamstown. Go Eve. Can't wait. I kind of want to take myself outside of my comfort zone. I was a city boy growing up in New York and wanted to go away for college. And this seemed, between me and the couple thousand other people who live in the town, plus the 2,000 students and about 10,000 cows, I felt it was about as far away as I could go.
It's so funny. I didn't realize there was that many cows. However, the person that was a valedictorian at my school, good friend of mine, he went to Williams. That sounds more like home because we're from Amish country. So this is a really interesting pivot in education. You went from English to then finance at Emory. Tell left and right brain about to the maximum. Tell me about that.
Right, what the hell? Well, I've always been a numbers guy too. So I've tried to be well-rounded. I'm a curious person. I like to read, I like to learn. And finance was a pretty hardcore discipline that I could study while getting my MBA. And because I had an undergraduate degree in English, right, which prepares you for everything and nothing, as you know, I figured finance would be a good way to go when I went to business school.
And what was your first step after school? Where did you enter the in your corporate journey?
After Williams, you mean?
Yeah, after
Yeah,
Williams, during your MBA, things like that.
yeah. I could tell the story. Well, first of all, after Williams, I took a year off, which I recommend to anyone because you graduate as a 21-year-old, you don't really know what to do. So I did a bunch of traveling and went lived in another country. But then I actually went to work for a Williams alum, which is another lesson I like to tell people is sometimes the best opportunities are close to home. And,
Interesting. Hmm.
we have excuse me, a great network. And I reached out to a bunch of alums and I connected with one. So I had a really fun first job out of college. Worked as an analyst for analyzing small cap stocks. Knew nothing about it. He kind of taught me that business and we ended up doing a bunch of interesting things, entrepreneurial things actually, aside from that.
It just goes to show it's sometimes not what you learn in school, it's who you get connected with. That sounds like such a great relationship, the springboard of the career.
Right. Not just what you know, but who you know, right?
Amen. So then you got your degree. I have another colleague who has an MBA from Emory. Smart guy. Love working with them. What was that jump like?
Well, so after I had a couple of jobs after Williams. I had that job with that entrepreneur where we actually launched a business preparing companies for Y2K, which was
Mm.
interesting. I got a chance to go down to DC, meet with Senator Moynihan, brief him on the Y2K problem. So that was really cool for a 25-year-old. Um, and then I joined a company that was working with a bunch of dot coms. And I would say that was really my first entrepreneurial experience where I really felt the highs and lows of entrepreneurship, right? And literally
Sure.
I felt both the highs and the lows in that experience. Because if you're in 1999, you're working with dot coms. I mean, they are flying. They are making money left and right, or at least raising money. So we as a consulting company, I mean, we were getting paid, we were working hard, playing hard, living in New York. I mean, living the life, right? And then 2001, April, the internet bubble bursts and the company's gone. So talk about going from high to low, feeling that as an entrepreneur.
And it's such an interesting time to be in business, especially around the world, because I distinctly remember people thinking that once 2000 hits on the clock, it's over. So it just goes to show that, some people win, some people lose, especially around the sentiment of fear. What is
Right.
something that you learned in terms of how to navigate the highs and lows, that roller coaster, working close with the leadership in the entrepreneurial space?
Well, I love that. And you mentioned fear. So, I believe that we can operate really in only two modes. You're either operating in fear mode or you're operating in love mode. That's really the two modes of existence. If you really want to simplify, and I love simplification, so I think that, as an entrepreneur, most of the entrepreneurs I work with, and I love this about them, is they work in love. Like
Mm.
there's always another opportunity. There's always something else they can do, right? But you can't just be naive about that, right? You have to have that plan, right? You have to have your 1 year plan. You have to have your 10-year target. You have to have your 3 year picture. You have to know where you're going. You can't
Sure.
just operate purely on grit and hustle and instinct the way I started in my entrepreneurial journey and the way I know many entrepreneurs work.
So one thing you said that just struck a chord between the paradigms of fear and love. I also think of in terms of mindset, not just an emotional heart feeling, but scarcity versus abundance being almost synonymous. And like you said, I think it's great to have that grit and that toughness. And someone could be as tough as nails and they could have a scarcity mindset saying, I'm going to stuff every dollar I ever earned underneath the mattress. And if the world ends, I'm going to get this Faraday bag and I'm going to, bunker down and survive this apocalypse of Y2K. And then you probably experienced others that were like, hey, there's a lot of fear and people losing their tail. That probably means there's some way, swim lanes to navigate that there could be some great success. So, what are your thoughts on scarcity and abundance mindsets and some of the instances you've seen of both during that time
Well, I
period?
love that. Oh, sorry, I love that. And both of those, and they tie to fear and love perfectly well, right? So scarcity, fear, abundance, love. I don't know what the exact statistics are, but the vast majority of, billion-dollar companies are actually created in recession. I mean,
Really?
it's the best time. You can get talent. People are willing to just work hard for not a lot of money. There's tons of opportunity. You can get real estate cheap. I mean, all kinds of stuff, right? So, I forgot, I don't remember if Warren Buffett said, when people are scared, I get greedy, but
Yeah, I think it was Uncle
I think
Warren.
he said that, right? Warren Buffett handing over the reins, big news coming out of Omaha right now.
Yeah,
Most exciting place to
95.
be right now, Omaha, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, um, there's ample opportunity every day to live in abundance or scarcity. And we believe that we need to train ourselves to be in abundance, because when we're in abundance, we're happy, we're free, we're able to connect better with people, we take calculated risks, we build our businesses better, and that's a place to be.
I totally agree. I think that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is right now. It's the
Oh
same
yeah.
thing with investing. It's the same thing with um, probably honestly starting a business, I think, as an investment. And when people wait for the opportune time, it becomes like you're watching a train come and go from the station. Like if you're waiting for the best time, it's just going to pass you by. That brings me to my next question about the pivot. You worked during the dot-com bubble, but then you also founded and operated a retained executive search business. Tell me about that pivot. That's a bit of a different, I mean, probably a lot of similarities, right, with entrepreneurship and understanding that people and energy make or break. Like you said, getting the right talent at the right price can really make it a business. But how did you know it was the right time to take that opportunity?
Well, I'll answer that. I like talking about the highs and lows of entrepreneurship, and really starting that, I talked about the low with the .com, and then the high was I was COO of a company and we sold it to Morgan Stanley private equity. So coming off that high, it's like, yeah, I could sit down and I can kind of rest on my laurels for a while, maybe not work, maybe hang out. But I kind of took the energy from that success and I started a recruiting company. And I pivot, so that was a pivot because I hadn't started a recruiting company, but I felt there was an opportunity in the market. And nice dog, by the way, looks cute.
Thank you.
The opportunity was and still exists, by the way, shout out to talented, ready to work people with disabilities that just need an extra push and extra help to get the job they need and deserve. So I started the business there. That was my first pivot. And then 2 years later, because I realized the market just wasn't ready to really hire people like that and big picture, I pivoted to start recruiting COOs, which was an area that I had some experience in being one. And then a client of mine introduced me to EOS in 2014, and that's where that kind of brings me to today in a lot of ways.
You mentioned earlier that you're a sucker for simplicity. You like to take things and simplify them. And I think that sometimes I don't know how complicated my life would be if I didn't get introduced to EOS 8 years ago. Nor do I want to try and figure that out. But what was it like for you when you had that introduction from the client? Like, what was your initial feeling and reaction?
Well, so I mean, it's awesome. It was an awesome time. It's shout out to Richard Simtov, my man, cool dude, great guy here in Michigan and Florida, serial entrepreneur. In Gino's traction book. He just said, "Dude, I think you'd be interested in this." Most of the time, I listen to people is when they call me dude. And Richard was just really direct, and I looked into it, and I fell in love right away. When other people tell me that, I'm like, I get it because there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of power in the book. And then I self implemented it right away in the business. Started running my recruiting company on EOS, and doubled my business in 3 years. So, what could be bad?
I love that you just said most of the time I listen to people is when they call me dude. And you were in one of the more B2B centric type positions you could possibly be, especially when it's C suite. I think just to go down that thought pattern, one of the unique marketing truths, at least in my experience, is that when you're doing B2B, especially Uber B2B, where everyone's language is as buttoned up and polished, full of circling back and let's sync and all types of corporate lingo, and you can break that barrier and make a human to human connection, it is just such an amplifier for actually getting things done. So, can you tell me a little bit more about that phrase? About most of the time you listen to people is when they call you dude.
I will. I will. And you are so wise, and I totally agree with you. And, it's so easy to get sucked into that. I've been sucked into the corporate B2B lingo for a long time. By the way, EOS is so not corporate. That's one of the things that makes us super cool. We are cool. I mean, we're cool nerds. Let's not kid ourselves because EOS is like nerd central, right? We got this process. We're following the process. I mean, it's nerd, but it's like Revenge of the Nerds. It's cool stuff.
I want to clip that phrase right there, Adam. That was poetic. I can now believe that you have your English degree from Williams.
There you go. Appreciate it. And I became an EOS implementer. Shout out to Eric Perkins, my EOS implementer buddy, who's like, hey, dude, you should become an EOS implementer. So again, the best insights and what that word does and what these kinds of statements do is it just takes you out of your kind of comfort zone and it takes you out of your autopilot mind and gets you focusing on what really matters.
It reminds me of one of the core tenets of EOS that stuck with me is the idea of having an open and honest leadership team because the foundation of the successful team is based off of trust. And I'll tell you, if someone's ready to drop dude or say a curse word in a conversation, I'm just like, okay, the barriers are down, the mask is off. Here's me, and I think that a lot of people cling to this identity or this title or this accolade that they have. And it's really like, hey, we're just people trying to help people. And when you're open and honest and you can call somebody dude and just tell them, hey, frankly, here's how it is, what better way to build trust? So obviously you trusted your EOS implementer buddy. What are some of the things since you started EOS over a decade ago that you've seen time and time again that successful leadership teams display, whether it's core values, characteristics, that tell you these dudes are open and honest, like we're going to have a great session?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love that you bring up open and honest. By the way, I love defining those terms, if I may, for a minute. So open and
Please.
honest. Oh yeah, open. So let's split them apart. So what does open honest mean? Open mean? Open means listen to understand, not to respond, right? It's really
Stephen
about listening.
Covey. Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Seek first to understand. Love that.
Listen, right? And honest means to just say it, right? If the word dude is what needs to be said, you just say it. And don't sugarcoat it, because when you do, it's frustrating. People are trying to understand the true meaning behind what you're saying, so just say it. Open and honest is a big part of great leadership teams. Other aspects of great leadership teams is that they can make decisions. And the way they make decisions is they get the issues out on the table so they know what even they're deciding, right? So it's what we teach. It's IDS, identify, discuss, and solve your issues. It's having a great integrator who can make the call if the team can't come to a decision, because business isn't a democracy, right? We don't always have to agree, and 80% of the time we might agree, and 20% we're not. So that's fine. Someone just needs to make the call. We agree to disagree, and someone's just got to make the call because we have to move on. We're running a business.
And if you're able to disagree, you at least feel heard and valued at the table, which probably in the long term generates way more buy-in and commitment.
Way more trust, Patrick Lencioni.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's so true. So speaking of etymology, and I mean, as someone that was an English major as well, I love just dissecting, defining words. I mean, I had a dictionary next to my nightstand growing up. What does good look like in the EOS life? I'm going to go as broad as possible, like the hardest thing to define, but should be the simplest.
Yeah. I mean, what does good look like like being your authentic self, showing up as who you are in every aspect of your life, right? So a lot of us have an easier time showing up authentically in our personal life, but we're full of shit, excuse my language, in our business lives.
I've seen it time and time again. I've seen some of my most on paper successful colleagues or buddies. Friday at 5 o'clock hits, and they just take off the suit and tie, throw it against the wall, open up the case of beer, and they just let loose for 72 hours until Monday rolls around. And then the mask gets back on. Time to play charade and Halloween for the next 5 business days straight. And I mean, for some people, like I get it, that's just not me. And you mentioned earlier about having an executive search function with people with that were maybe not neurotypical or maybe disabilities. And
Mm-hmm.
there was a book that I read, the ADHD Entrepreneur by Matt Curry,
Mm,
and it was all about
nice.
how neurodivergence could be a superpower. And
Mm,
after reading that, I think it was 2015, 2016, I
mm,
really just had a case of the fuck it, excuse my
mm.
French,
Yeah.
and just started being open and honest. And I found that not only did I have more energy and I got probably more stuff done, and I think I stopped caring about being liked and I was more interested in just like respecting myself, and then other people probably respected me more from that. What has been your experience to double tap on that mission you had before the COO executive search with people that were maybe not as typical, so to speak?
Yeah. You want me to kind of weigh in on why I did that and where I kind of
Yeah, I think
connected
that's a
with that?
really
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, well, I mean, my oldest daughter was born with cerebral palsy, and it hits close to home. There are millions of talented people with disabilities for different reasons that are held back. A lot of it is them holding themselves back, but there's some systemic things there. They're incentivized to keep their health benefits. They're incentivized not to work. Talk
Mm,
about a screwed up incentive, right? We need all the talent we can get. So there's tremendous skill and ability. Certainly, the neurodiverse entrepreneur, the ADD entrepreneur. There are many. We could have a whole discussion and talk about all the people we know that fit that bill. Steve Jobs, certainly, and others.
Really?
They
I wasn't
just,
even aware that Steve Jobs would. I mean, I knew he was a character, but I didn't realize he would fit the bill of like
100%,
ADD.
100%,
Huh.
100%. So it's just about giving people the opportunity they need and deserve. I mean, not everyone's going to be an entrepreneur, and that's totally fine too. Let's
Yeah,
give them the
yeah.
opportunity to maximize themselves and who they can be in all aspects of their lives. By the way, that's what EOS is all about, right? When we do right people in the right seats, putting people in the seat, there's all kinds of emotion about that, and people attach themselves to their seats and their ego. You really need to strip all that away, and you really want to be in the seat that's right for you, where you can act in your unique ability. Thank you, Dan Sullivan, and be the best person you can be.
I think that's the key to making the world a better place. Is just optimizing the potential of everybody to meet so that they can be the best person they can be. And I know that we could share stories about our experiences with people that may have had something that would be, qualifying them as a square peg in a round hole. But one of my cherished and treasured mentors grew up with ADD, probably ODD, oppositional defiance disorder, but also palsy. I think it was cerebral palsy. And I talked to him, and I'm like, I don't. I just told him I didn't believe him, and he got very serious. He goes, living life, Ross, how I grew up. He goes, you better be pretty damn tough, or it can just eat you up. And this is a guy that I believe could do anything, and he kind of proved that you can do anything you set your mind to it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm appreciative that you shared the story of how you started that and why, and it reinforces that belief from my mentor Todd that, I mean, limitations only exist if you really believe in them.
Totally love that. Love to connect with Todd at some point. Sounds like an awesome dude.
Uh, he's got stories for days. That's one of
Love
the
it.
one of the things that I would love to. If I ever have a clarity break and when I'm done, I think he's probably number one on my list of people to call afterwards. One thing he told me, one of the actually reasons I'm doing the show, Adam, is that you can teach somebody how to do something. You can tell them what to do. But if you can tell them a story of how that question relates to your own experience, much more valuable. And I believe that.
Beautiful.
So we're gonna jump back in the timeline. We're gonna go back into the reel of the tape and say you sold a business to Morgan Stanley Private Equity. For those of you that maybe are not as familiar with Morgan Stanley or private equity, corporate, right? That's a corporate thing to do.
Big time.
But then you made the exit and you did the more entrepreneurial thing. And now, as an EOS implementer, you've had the experience of really helping all kinds of entrepreneurial businesses. What are some of the key advantages with your brush with corporate and big money that have helped you to become a better facilitator and teacher and coach?
Well, I believe all your life experiences kind of helps you get to where you are. That's why there's really no bad experience. So corporate America, it took me, a lot of times, and I tell this, my daughter is a freshman, finished her freshman year in college. She's finishing up this week. And I always tell her, I always tell the young people I talk to that, um, just get a job, just get out there, get it in the world. And, even if you're in an ice cream shop, you're learning about communication, you're learning about money, you're learning about people. You can learn something from every job, what you like and what you don't like. So, I've learned from everything. I realized that corporate America is not for me. As my mentor, Mike Levin, one of the finest people in the world, taught me is, you either want to be in the corporate welfare state or you don't. And I decidedly did not want to be in there. So that's what it is.
I'm so glad that you said it because there's a funny skit out there, Adam. It's about Uncle Daycare.
Mm,
It's essentially like, what do grown adults that
mm.
have too much time on their hand do during the day? And sometimes I think that there's corporate gigs that are just like Uncle Daycare, like you said, like the welfare state. And it's like, if you're spending that much time in your life and you feel like you're wasting time, there's nothing wrong with finding something else, anything else.
Nothing wrong. And if you want to do that, Godspeed, but
Sure.
you're not in my world because you're the sum total of the five closest people to you. So, I mean, I don't want to be hanging out with those people. Not interested.
Man, that's so true. Who are some of the people that were close to you in your journey that you can think back on and be like, man, I'm so glad I got to be close to you, and what are some of the things they imparted upon you to help you like become more of who you are?
Well, mentors, I mean, mentors are huge. So go get mentors. I mean,
Yeah.
so Mike Levin's been a mentor to me since my days in business school. He's the former COO of Sands Corporation, working with Sheldon Adelson, maybe one of the toughest jobs in America. But he's such a humble guy and really just teaches me to always learn from other people and always ask good questions. I've had tons of great mentors in the EOS community, shout out to Jim Coyle, Don Tinney, Gino Wickman, who started EOS. I mean, there's almost, too many to name. There's just so many awesome people in EOS. I've really had a lot of great people kind of along the way. My favorite boss at the dental business that we sold to Morgan Stanley, Dr. Marcy Borofsky, the best entrepreneur I've ever worked with. Just a brilliant entrepreneur who sees all the connections, sees all the opportunities, lives in abundance, just an awesome woman. Great, great, great person.
Man, it's refreshing to hear good boss stories that had like a favorable quote unquote breakup, because I feel like so many people just complain about their boss. They're just like, oh, my boss this, my boss that. And I think that when you're an entrepreneur and you're your own boss, you can definitely complain about your boss, but guess what? It's your job to fix it. It's great to hear stories of people having a good example,
Mm.
which leads me to a question I know I'm like it's burning for me to ask you is what are some of the biggest challenges since you've seen what a great visionary looks like? You know what good looks like. You have that definition, that frame. What are some of the biggest challenges that visionary entrepreneurs face that you've seen time and time again?
I mean, the biggest single challenge of a visionary entrepreneur is getting their puzzle piece, getting their integrator. Hands
Interesting.
down, most important thing that they need to do. Now, when you're starting a business and you're like one guy or two people, that's really hard, right? So what I would say is for employee two, three, four, like bring someone on that you could start delegating stuff to. Even if they're not your perfect puzzle piece, you can't be sitting in six seats and doing everything because you're going to get frustrated. If you're a true visionary, your unique ability is big relationships, coming up with opportunities, selling, culture. Don't get stuck in the weeds. You're killing yourself. Don't do it.
It goes back to that toughness and scarcity mindset too, where it's like I think sometimes, at least in my purview, some of the best visionaries are sometimes too tough for their own good. Where it's
Mm,
like they might think that delegating and elevating is like a sign of weakness, but really it's a sign of self awareness.
well said. Couldn't have said it better myself.
So I think, man, that's such like hits so close to home as someone that's like started and exited businesses a couple times. I feel like it's always the first key hire that gets me and sometimes my clients tripped up. And you said something that was really interesting that it doesn't necessarily have to be an integrator right away. It just needs somebody that you can offload your mental load and your task list to, that then you can focus on being the visionary. And then once the business hits the constraint where you can't just offload like repeatable tasks, is that the time to find the missing puzzle piece, the integrator?
I mean, that would be a great time. That would
Yeah.
be a great time. Yeah, and it's different for everyone in terms of timing, but you'll know most entrepreneurs, most visionaries are very intuitive leaders, and you'll know. You're going to hit a ceiling and you'll know that it's time.
That's such an interesting, I don't even know if you know how profound that was. It trusting your intuition as a visionary. I feel like I've talked to business owner after business owner that sometimes is like afraid to listen to their intuition. And it's like that's what got you to the dance. That's like who you are. It's almost like when we're saying dude to people and bringing down that corporate mask. Like don't put a mask on your own intuition either, right?
Percent. I forgot to give a shout out to Mike Payton, too, EOS's second ever visionary, who also, and Gino. I mean, both of them just are such real people and so open and honest and direct and unmasked. It's just so inspiring to just be in a community with people like that.
And I think when you're in a community like that, it probably encourages everyone around them to take their mask off too. And for some people, it's
Hmm.
scary, but for the right people, it's not.
It's totally true. And, we can always get better even as a community. And I sometimes, I get frustrated and I try and help people in the EOS community, like some new implementers, like they still need to shed their masks. They've still got some of that. And I try and help them along the way.
Man, that's pretty cool. That I mean, you have the experience because I know EOS is an organization that's around 150 worldwide implementers, and you were there before the great explosion in the early days. So you get that unique perspective, almost as being like a mentor implementer, which is it's so necessary. So my question to that is, how has EOS changed since you started in 2014?
Well, I mean, EOS has grown dramatically, as you say. We have hundreds of implementers now all over the world. But we've really tried to maintain, we're each individual. So I own my own business, right? And each of us are our own business owners. And we really are unique because we each have our own character, we each have our own experience. We teach the same system, but we all approach things a little bit differently. We have a different style. So, if you're an entrepreneur looking for an implementer, there's definitely a right fit implementer for you. And if you're not sure who that is, reach out to me and I can help you find it. After all, I was a recruiter for 8 years, so I know how to connect people to opportunities. So there you go.
I love that. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
one
and
of the.
it might not be me, by the way. Could be someone else.
I mean, you talk about abundance often, and I think that's one of the keys to abundance. It's made my life so much better personally. One, thinking that sales isn't about getting somebody to sign the dotted line. It's about helping people to make the best decision for them.
Mm.
And two, that um, if like no good deed goes unrewarded, in my opinion, whether you just do a good deed because it feels good and then you get a little bit of a, at the end of the day, pat in the back, or you never know what can happen just by helping somebody and they won't forget it. And I think that's really the spirit of what you're talking about within the US community.
You just never know. So I could tell a story on that is talk about abundance mindset. So I'm going to give a shout out to a friend of mine, another recruiter named Mike Frummelt out of Minneapolis. Mike and I were competing when I was a recruiter for the EOS business to recruit their next integrator. And Mike actually won that search, so he won the business. But he was really abundant mindset. I reached out to Mike. I said, "Let me help you in this search. I know a lot of folks. They wanted someone in Michigan. I'm like, hey, man, I live in Michigan. I can help." And to his credit, he let me participate in the search. And EOS was cool with that. And I was the one who ended up finding Kelly Knight, who became the EOS implementer. She's integrator. She's been the integrator at EOS 2016. And it changed her life, changed EOS forever.
Going into etymology and defining terms,
Boom.
you really just hit the nail on the head with how I think about humility and to be humble. Is I don't think humility means to think less of yourself. I think it means to think more of others. And you've done so many shout outs to this podcast. It's like, man, Adam, you are someone that I would peg as possessing humility and being a humble person because of how much you think about others and really just making their situation better and helping first, being a real go giver. So I guess my question to you based off of that is, and I've been dying to ask this since before we got on camera. What is the single what quote do you have that has been the most profoundly influential? I'm dying to hear it.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Um, do what you can, want what you have, be who you are.
It's so simple, but so like profound. So do what you can, want what you have, be who you are. I think to go into a little philosophical rabbit hole, that's what that's what nirvana sounds like, right? That it's not you can either obtain everything that what you desire, right? Be the biggest hyperachiever ever, but then there's always the next mountain peak, or be content or happy with what you got.
It's been ever since I heard the quote about 10 years ago, it's been my shining star.
No, I'm gonna have to. I'm writing that down. That will be
Forest
clipped.
Church, Unitarian minister of blessed memory. Forest Church.
Forest Church.
Coming from a Jewish guy, you know? Kind of interesting.
There's so much that, one of my favorite philosophy professors, definitely my favorite philosophy professor. Who am I kidding? Number one. His last name is Silverstein, Michael Silverstein. Big shout out to him. And it's so funny. Like, he grew up in Oklahoma. So, as you know, you grew up, you said New York, and now you're in Michigan. Probably a big culture difference, is my guess. I've spent a little bit of time in
100%.
Michigan,
100%.
but you're still who you are, right? You can take the New Yorker out of New York, but but how the phrase goes, I'm going to butcher it right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And he comes from Oklahoma, and then now he's in South Central Pennsylvania. And one of the things he said to me, I said, "So what should I do?" He goes, "Whatever you want." And I'm like, "That's a career?" And he goes, "If you make it that way." And it took me a couple years and like to really think about that. I'm like, huh. I'm doing a podcast with Adam Kaplan on a Monday morning, talking about what I want to talk about, philosophy and personal growth. Yeah, I think a couple decades later, I'm doing what I want, and it goes along with your quote. So, shout out to cross denominational spiritual advisors.
I love it. Shout out to Silb. Love it.
Oh man, Adam, what is one thing that you would like to, at the end of the day, ask yourself? Let's say the 60 minutes before your time has come, whether that's old age or some random happening, that you can say, hey, I would like to I would like to tell you at the end of the day. How would that go? It's kind of the grandfather paradox question.
Hmm. Hmm. Like looking back at my life kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Like, what do you hope to accomplish? What's your BHAG, your personal BHAG?
My personal BHAG is like, was I a good friend? Was I there when my friends needed me? I mean, you're going to be there for your family, right? Because you have to.
Yeah.
But your friends, that's totally opting in. That's completely optional. You choose your friends. They choose you. Did you show up? Did you show up for your friends and the people when they needed you? Not when it was convenient for you,
By choice, not obligation.
right?
I'm going to do my best not to get in too deep a thought from these answers here, but I'm going to probably do it after our call. This is a new question that I'm trying, and I didn't ask it to you yet, but if you could leave a question for the next person I interview, that's probably an EOS implementer. What question would you ask that person?
I would say if you look back on your 10 years in EOS implementer, what would you like to have accomplished during that time? What does good look like? What does done look like? I'm done. Last session, no more EOS implementer. That day is going to come for all of us. So what does good look like when that day comes?
Well, dude, I know for me, I totally get along with being a good friend. I think at the end of the day, if everyone that I was friends with would say not only like, yeah, Ross existed, he was cool, he was funny, but if they say he was a good friend, I think that's a really powerful way to think of what good looks like, and I will be sure to ask the next person. Much less serious and deep question, Adam. Where can people find you? Get in touch, follow along. One of the things I love about this show is, like you said before, I think that there's way more than 230,000 businesses that could be impacted by EOS. One of my personal goals is share the good word of EOS and help them find the right implementer. So where can they find you?
Yeah, for sure. You can email me, adam.kaplan, at eosworldwide.com. For sure, find me on LinkedIn, find my microsite. You can find me, not too hard. I'm around. Love to talk to you and help you find your right fit implementer, talk about EOS, talk about quotes, whatever you want.
Wonderful. Well, hey, I had an excellent time. Everyone listening, I hope that you had as many nuggets of wisdom as I did. I know it was sure valuable to me. And I don't run ads in the show, but if I did have one ask, it would be to share it with a friend that could really benefit. So until next time, everyone, be well. Adam, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ross. I really enjoyed spending the time with you.
Excellent.